Oh, you want me to talk you want me to talk about this game? This game right here, Dragon Ball Z Kakarot? Sure. 1 second. Dragon Ball Z Kakarot. So Dragon Ball Z Kakarot is kind of like, I guess it's this generation's new wave when it comes to Dragon Ball Z games, because every generation since like the SNES has had like a Dragon Ball game that sets itself apart from the rest, and I guess that's what this is for the 8th generation. It's developed by CyberConnect 2, the team behind Naruto XL or Naruto Ultimate Ninja, including the Storm series, so like 9 Naruto games that I can think of at least right now. 10. 11. 11 Naruto games I can think of. And when I heard that it was CC2 behind this game, I got really excited, as a lot of people did, because, like a lot of people, I really enjoy the Storm games. So, even with knowing that this game was supposed to be an action RPG, because that's what the project was called, Dragon Ball Action RPG, before we got this sorry-ass title. But I was like, you know what? I'm sure they'll find some way to make it work. I have no reason to believe that they can't make a good action RPG. They just haven't done it. So let's see what happens. My optimism was misplaced. So let's go over the story first, right? I mean, it's Dragon Ball. The Dragon Ball story has been told through so many games. No, the Dragon Ball Z story has been told through so many games. Dragon Ball has hardly been touched. But, I mean, if you know the Dragon Ball Z story, then you're not really going to be surprised at anything that you find in this game. Apart from the weird corners that it cuts. Okay, here's the thing. Some of the cutscenes in this game are beautiful. Some of the cutscenes look better than the scenes that they're replicating from the original anime. Like, Piccolo's sacrifice for Gohan is way more fleshed out and way more authentic to watch in this game than it is in the anime. But there's no over 9,000. There's no like sequence of Gohan getting pounded in the face by Cell. There's no. You don't get to do any of the fights in the World Tournament in the Buu Saga, which is stupid because you start the saga by going to the arena, but you don't get to do any of the fights. And I'm just like, okay, whatever, that's fine, sure. And a lot of the cutscenes are severely lower in quality than the cutscenes I just talked about. Because the ones I talked about are like fully animated, fully voice acted, all this stuff, really cinematic. And then some of them are just the character standing there going, okay, sure, I guess you're right. Like, preloaded dialogue, and then you read a text bubble. And it's like, cool. And then, the weirdest example, at the tail end of the game, at the end of the Buu Saga, all the characters are rejoicing that Goku saved the universe, but none of them are, like, they're all static, but their mouths are moving. It's really weird, and it gives you this very uncanny sense of what you're seeing. None of the characters are moving, but their mouths are. And it's just like, And then there's a third type of cutscene that just involves the characters standing there very rigidly, but still having full conversations. Like when Raditz knocks Goku onto the ground. It's like, I guess he's hurt. I can't really tell. My favorite example of how cheap some of the cutscenes are in this game is on Planet Namek. Vegeta's like, well, I want to gather the Dragon Balls, so he decides to hide one underwater. And instead of animating him throwing a Dragon Ball into the water, the screen goes black, a text bubble comes up and says, Vegeta hurled the Dragon Ball into the lake. And then it goes back to the cutscene, and the Dragon Ball is already underwater. And I'm just like, I guess. But, I mean, like I said, it's the Dragon Ball story. So, of course, you're going to know what it is, so I guess it's time to move on to the gameplay. Now, with action RPG, you would expect to, like, have to, how do I explain this? You would expect that level would matter. Like, if a certain mission is a certain level, then you would have to go do side quests or go trigger some random encounters, go farm for a little while to get to a certain level, get certain moves, get this, get that. You can do that, but it doesn't matter. At least not for the first half of the game. From what I could tell, the RPG aspect of the game doesn't open up until after the Cell Saga, because it's at that point that your personal level actually matters. Because what the game will do is just toss XP to your characters until you're the level that you need to be. Like, playing through the story of this game, you kind of realize how little Goku is actually there throughout DBZ. He's only really a huge part of the Cell Saga. But because Goku spends so much time off screen, you're not playing him as much. Like, you play more Piccolo and Gohan, but because Goku needs to be a certain level at a certain point in the game, they just give him 500,000 XP so that he'll be leveled up. And it's especially egregious in the Buu Saga when both he and Vegeta get 15 million XP to start. And if getting 15 million XP sounds like XP numbers don't matter, it's because you're absolutely right, and they don't. Especially because towards the beginning of the game, you can do as many side quests as you want, but it won't impact your level. The XP that you get from these side missions is so minuscule that if you had done them all before you went to fight Frieza, you'd have the same level as if you didn't. That's just how that is. They do nothing for you until late game. And even then, it's late game, so you don't care. There's no replay value in this game because it's just the story of Dragon Ball, but handled in the clunkiest way. So it's like, alright, that's another thing. Cyber Connect 2, from the Storm games, if you're like a Naruto vet and you play the Storm games, and you get the sense that it's not the best way to experience a story because they cut a lot of the fat out. Same with this. There's a lot of Dragon Ball Z content and lore from the story that doesn't make it into this game, and it's just if hypothetically speaking, if Dragon Ball Super was like the first thing that you saw that was like, oh, Dragon Ball's cool, but I want to watch Z, but I don't have that kind of time, and so you pick this up, you're gonna miss out on a lot. And I'm not just talking about filler. Important stuff to the story doesn't get into this game. I mentioned random encounters earlier, and that's because that's a thing in this game, but they're not exactly random because the groups of enemies are just kind of set in the environment and you can go to them, but a lot of times you have to go past them or through them to get to where you're going. Say you're trying to get a Dragon Ball, or you're trying to destroy that base over there, or you're trying to pick up an item for the mission that you're doing. A lot of times you don't want to fight, but you can't avoid it because once you go near them, they follow you through the air for a while. And if you're not paying attention and you stop your forward motion because it's like, I gotta pick up this Dragon Ball, boom, there they are, and you're in a fight now. And the thing is, because of the way that the story unfolds, there's a lot of characters that you don't really get to level up along the way. Like, Trunks is only playable for a very small portion of the main story. But in the end game, you get to use him again. But he's severely underleveled. Like, my Goku and Gohan are both level 85. My Trunks is a 61. And I'm bringing Trunks with me everywhere I go in the late game, or in the end game, because I just want to level him up, but he's worthless. He does 1 damage to every enemy. Like, the level scaling in this game is a joke. Like, 10 levels makes all the difference in the world. And that sounds like it should be obvious, right? But it's not my fault I'm underleveled. You took characters away from me and then decided to give them back at just the worst possible time. Because there's missions that you can't do with certain characters in your party. There's things that you can't do with certain characters in your party. There's entire portions of the game where you can't change your party at all. So it's like, how am I supposed to level these characters up if you won't let me play them? Another thing, the intermissions in between sagas are so boring. Literally just fetch quests. There's so many fetch quests in this game, and it makes sense with the side quests, but the main quests being fetch quests is an issue. And I'm just... Because okay, you have to fast travel a lot for these fetch quests. It's like, you go here, you activate the quest, then it's like, oh, well, you gotta go here, loading screen. And it's like 1.5 minutes on console. Why are you playing it on console on PC? Because it's a Dragon Ball game, and I know I'm gonna get rid of it. And it's like, okay, you go there, and it's like, well, you need to get this from there. So you go there, loading screen. And then you go back, loading screen. It's so frustrating because this game cannot require that much processing power. Like, it's Dragon Ball. How hard is it to run? Then, I guess we should talk about the combat aspect of the gameplay. It's really stale. You just press circle. That's all you do. There's one button, and it's not, there's still like, there's no like strategy. Like even in Naruto Storm, there's only one melee button, but if you get two people with skill, significant skill, you can get an interesting match because there's still more functions in the game. Not really in this game. There's just one attack button, and then you can do key blast if you want. Also, transformations. Sometimes, okay, you hold both triggers to pull up the transformation menu once you get transformations. That makes sense. And you hold the left trigger to block. Seems fair enough. Sometimes this game doesn't know what the fuck is going on because you will hold the block button and the transformation menu will pull up. And it's like, well, that doesn't sound like such a bad thing. Just don't transform. It slows the game down. It literally puts the game in a slow motion because it's buying you time to decide which form you're going to go into. And it's like, okay, when you get to late stage and you have 4 forms for Goku, there's a technique where you can block and then hit the dodge button, the dodge button barely does anything. If you block and then hit the dodge button right at the moment that you take the attack, you'll teleport behind them and hit them with a counterattack. Imagine my surprise when I tried to do this, but I didn't realize that the transformation menu was up, and so I just fucking went Super Saiyan 3. I'm Super Saiyan 3 now, and I didn't want to be. Like, I'm holding one of the 2 triggers that it takes to pull this menu up. Why is it up? Why is it in my face? And it's not exclusive to Goku. It also happens for Gohan and for Vegeta. But in certain fights, not all fights, not in random encounters, just in boss fights. And it's just like, dude. Speaking of boss fights, I don't think this is a spoiler. The final boss fight against Kid Buu, not the final boss fight, but the Super Saiyan 3 Goku versus Kid Buu fight can fuck right off, and here's why. He has like 20 times as much health as you do, and then he can just create clones of himself. And they're all way too durable to be taken out in the same way that you took out Cell's clones earlier in the game. So my strategy for beating this fight, never fucking stop dodging. And the thing about the dodge button is that there's some attacks you can't dodge because they will still auto-lock onto you. And there's some attacks that you can't block because they'll break your guard. So the obvious answer would be figure out what you can block and figure out what you can dodge. They're the same moves. The same moves are undodgeable and will break your guard. So no matter what happens, you might just take 500,000 damage. And it's like, well, how much health do you have? If you just play through the normal story, by the time you get to the end, you'll have about 8 million health. Maybe? Actually, I don't even think that's correct. I think you have like 6 million. I think I have 8 million now. But like 6 million health, and that's it. Kid Buu, 15 million. Like, it's like, and you're basically shooting spitballs at him compared to him punching you in the face with weighted gloves. It's just like, alright, that's fine. Damage scaling, who needs it? And you can level up some of your like special attacks by doing training and unlocking more moves and stuff like that. But the scaling on those goes from like really simple to, yo, this is like literally unfair. Like, because the game isn't hard. It's busted. There's a difference. Unbalanced does not mean challenging. And I'm starting to see a lot more games that don't understand. Well, Alex, what about the open world? There is no fucking open world. There's a collection of tiny sandboxes. But you can't go from one sandbox to the next because it's like you're about to leave the area. It'll let you pull up the world map and you can fast travel to the next world. That's fun. That's really fun. Especially when it's time to go collect the Dragon Balls for like the 3rd or 4th time for a quest. You know how many quests make you go get the Dragon Balls? And it's not like it's quick, right? Because sure, they pop up on the map, you can just go directly to where they're at. But you're watching like a minute-long loading screen each time. So you're watching at least 7 loading screens just to go get these Dragon Balls. It takes 7 minutes. Then you gotta go actually get them. Could take 30 seconds to a minute, depending on what happens. Do you run into trouble? Are you having a hard time fighting it? Because finding things in this game is literally ridiculous. There's a search for things button, like you can locate key with your key. And that's fine. But if I don't want to do that, the thing I'm looking for should, like, you know, glow or have some sort of beacon or something like that. The Dragon Ball glows when you're, like, that close to it. And then it emits a hum. You have to be right on it to know where it is. And by that point, what does it matter? Like, I can... If it wasn't glowing, I'd still be able to find it because it's just that close to me. But then, when you use the Dragon Balls, they scatter, obviously. But you cannot go recollect them for 10 real-life minutes. So, at the very least, considering that there's a trophy for using the Dragon Balls 10 times, at the very least, if you were doing nothing but just using the Dragon Balls, not even going to find them, it would take an hour and 40 minutes. An hour and 40 minutes just to use the Dragon Balls enough to get the trophy, much less go and get them. And the thing about the open world is that you can fly at like a slow speed, but it's really fucking boring, so it of course urges you to like dash fly. But doing that drains your ki, just like everything else in this game. So you're flying and you're losing ki, and then a random encounter starts, and now you have 1/3 of the ki that you're supposed to have for this fight. It'll recharge, but it'll take a while. And it's like, well, okay, sure. Another thing about the Dragon Balls is that you can use them to revive old enemies and fight them again. They become soul emblems for your community, which I don't really get the full effects of the community. It's a neat idea. Basically, you can put certain characters together on this board, and they'll activate like buffs and effects with each other, and that's cool. But some characters, you can't move them. Like, Goku can never be moved from the board he's on. King Kai is that same way. Mr. Popo is that same way. Bulma's that same way. So it's just like... And then you also can't duplicate characters from one board to another. So where they are is where they will be, unless you decide to put them on a different board. It gets really old really fast. But you can revive old enemies, and that sounds like, oh, you can fight Cell, you can fight Vegeta, you can fight Frieza. No, you can't. You can fight Nappa, you can fight Raditz, you can fight Kui, you can fight the Ginyu Force. And I'm like, where's the real enemies? No, you have to do a quest to get the real enemies. You can fight Cell, Boo, Frieza, and King Cold and Dabura again. But by the time you do that, you're so strong, they're not a threat. The only one who puts up a fight is Kid Buu. But even that fight is significantly easier than the actual boss fight version. So it's like, it feels like you're wasting time. And no, you can't fight old Vegeta because Vegeta didn't die. Well, he died twice, but he didn't stay dead. So you can't fight Vegeta because he's still alive. And it's like, yo, also, the game is really selective about what characters you can play. You can play Future Trunks, you can play Piccolo, Goku, Gohan, and Vegeta. And sometimes Gotenks when the story wants you to. And it's like, why can't I just play every character in the game when I want to? Because then you don't feel like you have full control of your party. You have very limited control. Because at a certain point, Krillin is solo level, Tien is solo level, you don't need them. Like, what is a level 30 support going to do for a level 85 Goku? Like, why is it not just handing out XP to all my characters? If it's so... If it gives it away so freely to story characters, these characters are in the same story, so why not them? Why not? There's no rules to what makes it an RPG. Like, oh, and then there's the fishing. I'm not even going to talk about fishing and hunting because that's so annoying. Everything related to food in this game is a nuisance. I only did it for trophies. Only. What else is there to talk about? Healing in game. Okay, ranks. Right? If you do exceptionally well in a fight, you get an S rank. If you do less well, you get an A. I've never seen anything below this, personally. I've had almost no health and still gotten an A. So, I don't know exactly what it is, but healing takes away your S. So don't heal. But you also can't go back and replay old chapters to see what you did wrong. You have to, like, load the old save. So, if you get an S and an A in the same section, you'll get an A overall. If you get 3 S's and an A in the same section, you'll get an A overall. So it's like, you know what? Don't even worry about it. Because you won't be able to fix it unless you immediately quit the game and load your old save. And unless you're going to do that over and over again for every fight in the game, there's no point. There's just no point. Also, every minigame sucks. The driving minigame, the Robo-Walker minigame, the baseball minigame, it all fucking sucks. Also, thing I forgot to mention about the combat. Sometimes the enemy will emit this red glow, and that lets you know that they're about to pile drive through your attack and hit you. And in the case like Kid Buu, it means he's about to do this minute 45-second long combo that you just can't do anything about. You can try to hit him, but it's best to just continue to evade so that you won't take the damage. If you press circle 3 or 4 times, I guess, it starts this full-length combo. And you can be holding the block button for the entire rest of the time that the villain that you're fighting is charging up their attack. Goku or whoever you're using will not start blocking until the combo is over. Now, this was a problem for me for a long time because I'm trying to stop the fighting. I can't stop. What you need to do is dodge away, and then you can block. But it's like, why can't I just move cancel normally, like in any game ever? Every game by this team has move canceling. Why can't I just block? I don't understand. Like, okay. The 3D aspect of it as well, it's done decently. It's not as bad as like Dragon Ball Z Sagas, but it's not as good as Budokai Tenkaichi 3. And what I mean by that is like, you know, you're fighting with a Z-axis, so sometimes your enemy will be above you, sometimes it'll be like slightly off center, so like shooting a ki blast, it might miss because they're moving, that's fine. But some enemies are so high up sometimes that you can't go up to hit them. You have to wait for them to come down, or you have to shoot a blast at them. And it's like, well, why not just shoot a blast then? Because unless you have a guided Kamehameha, which does 60% of the damage of a regular Kamehameha, they'll just move and you won't hit them, and you'll be wide open to get turned into candy. Now, sure, Boo is the only person that turns you into candy, but he does it a fucking lot. He does it a lot. You get turned into candy so much. I know it sounds like I'm being really hard on this game, and it's because it deserves it. I expected so much better in the end. Like, if you're... Okay, this game depends so much on nostalgia and, like, classic visuals from the show. Seeing Vegito was cool, I guess, because he's my favorite. He's like literally, not only is he my favorite fusion, he's my favorite character from all of Dragon Ball. This guy right here, maybe not particularly in his Super Saiyan God Super Saiyan form, but Vegito in general is my favorite. You know, I'm going to keep him... How do I keep him in frame for the rest of the... You know, I'm just going to hold him for the rest of the review so you can see my Vegito. But, like, if you're already a fan of Dragon Ball, then this game does have things that you can enjoy. Because, I mean, it's Dragon Ball. It's a story that you already know, you already like. Seeing it will always make you happy in a certain place. I don't like the Buu Saga, but seeing this guy filled me with joy. And it almost seemed like I was enjoying the game. That was not the case, though. But if you've never really been a Dragon Ball fan, but you want to play this game because you're a fan of, like, open-world action RPGs, this is not the wave. This is nowhere near as good as, like, Final Fantasy 15. In any RPG aspect. It objectively fails at being an interesting RPG. The open world is very limited and restrictive. A lot of the things that you need in order to function, you can't find on the map. Like campfires, you can't find campfires on the map, but you need those because if you're in the training room to get a new move and you take damage from the opponent that you're fighting to train, you keep that damage. Even though it's simulated damage, you keep it. And it's really annoying when you start trying to learn those higher level moves like the Super EX Spirit Bomb. You can take a lot of damage in that training match, and then you just walk around with it. And the combat also isn't exactly built to fight multiple enemies because of the lock-on system, which I really don't want to get into. Just the combat leaves a lot to be desired. It's not very intricate or extravagant or elaborate in any sort of way. It's just kind of there. It's a crutch that the game tries to use because you do so much fighting, but eventually it just all runs stale, all runs together, none of the fights become memorable. Some of the moments aren't even memorable. Goku's Super Saiyan 3 transformation on the show was like a 5-minute long scream, and it was awesome. In the game, he goes, Super Saiyan 3. Gohan Super Saiyan 2 transformation took a while, and he was like really emotional. He screamed for a long time. In the game, Super Saiyan 2. It's like, I guess, sure, but if this game is already dozens of hours long for somebody that's trying to complete it, what's the point of removing some of the impact that some of these scenes have, especially on people? If you're trying to nostalgia bait, which is pretty much what this entire game is nostalgia bait, people that know Dragon Ball as well as somebody like me, you can't just deprive them of a moment that they expect to enjoy and see and get good reviews out of it. That's just not going to happen. Like, I'm sorry, Vegeta, I gotta put you down. But this game isn't the... Okay. It does one of the worst jobs I've ever seen in a Dragon Ball Z game of portraying the Dragon Ball Z story. But it's not the worst Dragon Ball Z game I've ever played. That honor goes to Dragon Ball Z Sagas. The worst Dragon Ball game I've ever played is Dragon Ball GT Final Battle, but we don't gotta talk about that one. But just overall, there's so much to not enjoy. Like, I honestly was not enjoying myself. The only reason I'm still pushing through it is because I'm just trying to get more trophies. There's something wrong with the game as well, because if you pre-order it, there's supposed to be some like DLC story about the 6th member of the Ginyu Force named Banyu that's supposed to unlock after the Cell Saga. Nowhere to be found. Not in my data book, not in my available missions. I don't know where to find her. She's just not there. I don't know if it's a thing with the update, because I've mentioned that there's some sort of embargo on the game where you can't upload footage from the console onto YouTube or anything like that. I think that has to do with the fact that, like, the update to release the embargo hasn't come out. Because there's stuff that's supposed to be in the day one update that's not in the game. Also, Banyu is not in my game. So I'm forced to believe that Bandai has not updated this game yet. I know it's version 0.103, but there's things that are supposed to be there that aren't there. That's all I'm going to say about that. I get that this review ran really long, but, I mean, what am I supposed to say? But if you stick around to the very end, I can show you my favorite glitch from any Dragon Ball game. It's really funny. So, I guess if I was going to rate this thing, I'm not even going to make a graphic for it. Do not buy this game. At least do not buy it at full price. See, this is a completely new game. I paid $65 for this. Do not do that. Alright? If you're going to buy this game, buy it in like 4 years after the PS5 comes out, when this is going to be like $7. Maybe then it'll be worth it. But like, this is nothing but a cheap thrill. Like, there's no substance to this game. There's no bones. There's not even a thing here. You know? Like, there's just nothing to this game that makes it special. It doesn't stand above the rest because it does something new, because it doesn't do anything new. It's just kind of really forgettable. So, yeah, I'll see you soon. Keep going loose. Feet, foot, feet, dance on the